with other guys and saw their lives change as well, and saw how powerful this is, these secrets that if we would just open the Word and see what God has to share for us. But then not just the Word, but the testimonies of how God has used His Word and how God has used His power to change lives and to share that. And so that's one of the biggest things, is that it's a young single guy writing. And so I'm in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder with the guys reading. And I'm still single today. Yep. No major prospects. So probably going to be for a while, for some time. Another reason, but it's not just that. Another, one of the benefits of, I went to a Christian university, Cedarville University, and I had so many great female friends. And one of the things that I did is I got so excited about this, is I interviewed them through questions that I wrote down, and they would write back to me, answering questions like, what is it like to be, how does it feel when a guy sins against you sexually, when a guy looks at you lustfully, when a guy takes advantage of you? Mm-hmm. And because one of the biggest things we need to do, and one of that we need to change our minds is to realize this is not just between me and God. You know, that's where it starts. But if I sin sexually, then I'm affecting someone else.
You're violating someone else.
Exactly. That I might make a decision today that maybe I'll feel guilty about for a week, but I could leave this girl crying herself to sleep for years to come.
Yeah.
And I know that, and I have friends that have shared with me. And so there's a whole chapter, there's a chapter and a half where it's girls talking the whole time, telling us how it makes them feel. So that's another thing that makes Sex and the Single Guy unique, is that it's clean. It's tough. I don't pull any punches. I get right to the heart of the issue. But I do that without painting lustful pictures in your mind. Mm-hmm. And there's other books out there that go into graphic detail about a lustful situation. If I'm picking this book up in the first place, if I have any reason to read Sex and the Single Guy, Winning Your Battle for Purity, then I already know what it's like to have a lustful fantasy. I don't need someone to describe it to me. I don't need someone to explain.
I can already role play that one through my mind.
What I want to learn is, how do I live pure? How do I gain victory? And that's what this is about. And so that's another reason that it's unique, is that it's tough, but it's also clean. That it's appropriate, and I've talked to 20-somethings, I've talked to parents, and they've told me that this is completely appropriate for a 30-year-old, for someone who's married or someone older. But it's, at the same time, I have no qualms at all about handing it, giving it to a mother and saying, yeah, you can give this to your 13-year-old, because it's clean. It's appropriate for someone who's older, but it's clean enough, it's safe enough for a 13-year-old.
Okay, but as well, you've drawn from the wisdom of others in the past, and you've incorporated that in the writings as well. Mm-hmm. Who were you looking at? What were you beginning to find? What has been, said when it comes to a call to a pure life? Well,
and understand, as I say these things, and even though there's a method to them, I don't at all say that this is just that if you follow these 3 steps, then you'll be pure. Gotcha. Because it's all comes down to a heart issue. It all comes down to relying on Christ, a desperation, falling at the feet of the cross every day and saying, God, I need you, because my flesh is weak, but my spirit is willing, and I want to live pure, and I need you. And so please understand that and for the listener, for the viewer, this is not they can just follow these steps and that but these are definitely time-proven principles in my life and so many other lives.
That can bring you to a place where you can allow God by His Spirit to transform your heart.
Right. And so one of the things that I've learned is that this struggle, it's not, see, some people, when you hear the message of purity, some people just talk about, okay, here's the things to avoid the particular temptations. Yeah. Or some people say, don't worry about those, don't think about those, just go to the heart issue and discover why you're sinning this way, and just pick up the Word and read it and pray, and they say, and don't teach about those individual things. But the problem with that is, in separating those and only doing one or the other, it's like going and trying to minister to an alcoholic, and let's go and dig down deep and talk about why you're an alcoholic in the first place while you're sitting in a bar with a beer in front of him. And that's just not going to work. Mm-hmm. There are deep, hard issues, but you also need to be smart about, okay, let's get you out of the situation that's tempting you, because while you're working through those things, then you might have the tendency, the propensity to fall again and again. And so that's why there's sort of 3 different areas that I talk about that and how we can live pure. The first thing is our attitude towards sin and our attitude toward purity. The second thing is the battle plan, how we can actually isolate those particular areas, because it's different for every guy and for every girl, that where are you most tempted and how can you live pure in that particular area. And that also includes accountability, having someone keep us accountable. Did you put yourself in that situation? What did you do at that time? And then the third thing is the deeper issues in our hearts, because a lot of people don't realize this, but this is something that probably is bigger for the single person than the married person, is that loneliness is as big a cause, if not bigger a cause, of sexual sin as lust. And there's nothing, especially today, with all that we have available, with television, with cable, with just the
Satellite,
moral laxity,
internet, everything.
With everything that's available there, there's nothing that if we have a heart full of pain, whether it's from loneliness or from things that people have done against us in the past, or from guilt we're feeling over mistakes we made in the past, there's nothing we can do to dull that pain quicker than to just dive into sexual sin. We'll feel horrible about it later, but right now we can have this moment of pleasure, this moment of bliss, and we can, it's like just a shot in the arm that we can just dull this pain away real quick. And so one of the things that we need to do is to dig down and try to work through some of those things. So that's basically the outline. I can go into more detail on those things.
Okay, so when a young person or a single person picks up this book, okay, what's the journey that they'll begin as they carry through? Okay, I'm finding myself, struggling, okay, and I'm saying, Joseph, that's what I want. I hear your heart cry to be pure. I know how bad I feel. And as though I'm struggling with the feelings of being disqualified. You were talking earlier, about people abandoning really the call of God on their lives because they feel so unworthy and disqualified from the call of God. So, I know that there's people watching today that are struggling with that, and how can I move forward? So, if they were to pick up the book and read it and look it through, what's the journey? The possible journey that they'll begin to go through with it?
Well, in the first chapter, I sort of explain what we're talking about, that this is about purity. This is about total purity, not just abstinence.
Yes.
And sort of say where we're coming from. In the second chapter, I share my story about how my life changed in this area and where I came from and how I struggled in the beginning and then the turning point for me, and then how Christ has given me victory since then.
Now, once you had your turning point, okay, and we talked about that in the first half of the program, where you got real desperate and you just weren't going to let God go. How did that begin to work out in your life the next day, and the next week and months to follow?
And the fact is that I still am tempted every single day, and I have been tempted every day in the last 3 years, and I have still struggled with lust and other things in that time. But the trend of my life is that in the last 3 years, I've fallen less times than I would have in 3 weeks before that. And so the change has been lasting and real in my life, and that's the kind of change I've seen in other guys as well.
What's happening in your heart? Do you see yourself differently? Are you a freer person now,
Absolutely.
Than what you were before?
Yeah, and like I said, that's one of the things I've been learning lately, and as I'm maturing and growing, and this is a few years ago, even since I read this book, since I wrote Sex and the Single Guy, is just learning about what freedom is, and that I'm going, and these are some difficult things that we have to deal with. Is that I'm a young single guy. I have the same. I'm living in a very moral lax world. Went to a very moral lax high school, and I'm going into a very moral lax field and career, and in some areas, and I'm in the world, but I still have the same desires and a lot of the same. I'm still wired the same way as everyone else. And so how am I actually going to live different when those temptations come? How am I going to do it? And it comes down to, that I am going to trust the Lord, that it's going to go better, that it's going to go better in my life if I walk with him. And then also that it says in the word that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And that's one of the things that I wrote in one of the first chapters, is that one of the things we've done is that, and this comes to the first point, our attitude towards sin. And this is in a chapter called Why Do We Keep Sinning? The third chapter is exploring, there's that passage in Corinthians that says, I hate what I do. I do the thing that I don't want to do, but I don't do what I want to do. And it sort of explores that. And why do we keep sinning if we don't want to? And one of the things is that we've made God some sort of a genie on the shelf that we can rub the bottle, and he comes out and does what we want for him, but then we put him back and he's just a nice idea. But if we've forgotten who God is, and that God wants us to love him and to enjoy him and to just be completely joyful and peaceful about him, but at the same time, he doesn't want us to mess around with him either. He's the almighty God of the universe.
He is still God.
Right. And that if we remember who he is, and that what he could do, and that who we're reckoning with, that it's going to cause me to think twice about doing something that's going to dishonor him. And so, but so that's the first thing is our attitude towards sin, our attitude toward purity, to realize that if we think that God is withholding something good from us, see, this is one of the things that so many people think, is that the world is offering us sex, the church is telling us no, and God is withholding something good from us.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the foundational things, is that we need to trust God that he has given us, and he is going to give us the best gifts. The Bible says that God is a good father, and he knows how to give good gifts to his children. And so I need to trust him as I go and I walk, that if I follow him, if I honor him, then my life is going to go so much better. I can't necessarily see it right now. And this is definitely the art of delayed gratification, that there might be a little bit of a flash of pleasure here.
Right.
But I got to realize that if I wait, and a lot of times the blessing comes after we're obedient. Sometimes some people say, God bless me right now. Pour your all the gushy feelings of that I'm doing the right thing. Make me feel so great about this, and then I'll do it. But that's not how it works. Even Jesus, when he's in the garden, he's crying out. He's saying, God, I don't want to. He's saying, God, I don't want to go on that cross. I don't feel like it. This is not what I want to do today. I don't feel. But he said, but not your will, not my will, but yours be done. And it says, and then the angel came and comforted him. And so this is what we need to do, is to trust God. There's a section in the book about trusting God and believing in his promises, but also about how do we treat sin. And a lot of people want to say, sin isn't that bad. Sin. A lot of people get in this struggle where they feel bad about sin, and then they fall into sexual sin, and then they feel so bad about it that they want to go crawl away, and they want to dull the pain of that guilt, and they fall into that sin again. It's this vicious cycle. The problem is not that they have such a high view of sin. The fact is that sin is an awful thing that could have put us in hell and put Christ on the cross. He had to die on the cross to save us from that sin. So that sin definitely is a big deal. But the problem is not that we have such a high view of sin. The problem is that we don't have nearly high a view of grace. As horrible as that sin is, God's grace is even greater and can cover us from that sin. And that's what I want to say to the person who's watching, who like you said, feels that he or she can't do anything from the Lord because of what he's done. I was right there a couple of years ago where I fell into sin. I got into a relationship. Like I said, by the grace of God and the skin of my teeth, I didn't have sexual intercourse with her, but I did things only a man should do with his wife. And I felt so guilt-ridden over that. I repented the next day, and the fact that I confessed my sins to God and I was never going to do it again, I turned away from that. But the problem is that I would confess my sins, Bob. I would lay them at the cross, and then when I was done confessing, I'd take them, I'd sling them back over my shoulder and walk on with the guilt and the shame. And and just punishing myself for this sin.
Think